Nadine, 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 Nadine. I'm begging for you, please don't be a cunt. Hello everyone, today we will be talking about Nadine Dorries. But I'm still not settled on what to call her. Nadine? Miss Dorries? Who knows?
It's Nadine.
So Nads is fine.
Oh,
That's what your brother calls me, is Nads, as you know, so
well,
Nads is fine.
go Nads.
Perfect. Just perfect. Now look, Gonads isn't one of the more well-known Tories amongst the general public. I'd describe her as sort of a fluffer for the real offenders, a cheerleader, I suppose, a Grima Wormtongue. If Boris and Rees-Mogg are Team Rocket, Nadine Dorries is Meowth.
That's right!
She does, however, occupy one of the more insidious roles we see in politics. Let me ask you this, who is more to blame for a bad idea being represented in policy? The person who voices it, or the people who cheer for it? While you stew on that decadent mouthful of philosophy, let me let you know that in order to squeeze all of the stinky, nasty juice out of this bitter old lemon, I will be interspersing the main script with fun little bite-sized bits of stupidity and cringe that I couldn't cram into this video. Unlike most frontbench Tory MPs, Nadine was born in Anfield, Liverpool. She attended Halewood Grange Comprehensive School before moving with her family to Runcorn. That's a town most famous for 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, and maybe not inventing crime, but certainly utilising it to its fullest potential. In 1975 she became a trainee nurse, and just 3 years later she was a full-on non-trainee nurse. This built the foundations of Nadine's professional life, although she did move to Zambia for a year to run a community school while her husband ran a copper mine. I like to imagine that somewhere the Musk family's ears just perked right up. In 1997 she founded a company that provided child daycare services for working parents, then sold it to Bupa in the following year. She spent 1999 as a director of Bupa. Now, I'm sure this is nothing more than an interesting tidbit, but she's also authored several fiction books. She writes under the pen name Nadine Dorries, presumably because Wicked She-Bitch from Hell was taken, and for the most part seems pretty well reviewed. It's weird to think that there are a few people out there that know her just as an author, rather than as a political shit sandwich. Now the boring stuff is out of the way, let's take a look at her political career. She started as a prospective parliamentary candidate for the Conservatives in 2000, but didn't see success until 2005 when she won the seat for Mid-Bedfordshire. It might be a good time to take a look at her voting record just to get a flavour of what she's willing to put her name against legislatively. She's voted for higher taxes on alcoholic drinks. She generally votes for increasing VAT. She voted against a tax on bankers' bonuses. She mostly votes for more restrictions on trade unions. She voted against raising welfare in line with inflation. She always votes for selling off England's national forests. And she definitely wasn't very supportive of gay rights, voting against it 9 separate times. As I'm sure it will come as no surprise, she really hasn't done much except for towing the party line on pretty much everything you can think of. The only time she's really deviated is with gay marriage, where she continued to vote against despite the Conservatives eventually passing the law. Looking at her website, it must have been her ability to talk with all people from all walks of life that made her such a people person. Nadine was a member of the Innovation University's Science and Skills Committee, although by November 2008 she had attended only 2% of sessions. As the most recent exposé by Led by Donkeys has shown, it's obvious that these people are more concerned about what you can put on your CV than the actual measurable impact you can make on society. Pause. Here's one questionable tweet for you. After a Have I Got News For You party, she saw that her daughter was talking to a comedian, Reginald D. Hunter. She ended her tweet about it by saying, #where's my shotgun? Guess what Reginald D. Hunter looks like? Yes, you definitely guessed right. Moving on. In 2009, Dorries was swept up in the expenses scandal. Firstly, she claimed £3,000 for travel expenses to go and visit family looking after her sick dog. This means that the travel wasn't to accommodate her parliamentary duties and so should not have been claimed at the taxpayer's expense. During the expenses scandal, she caught a little bit of flack from David Cameron, the then Prime Minister, for complaining that the exposé could cause MPs to feel suicidal. Now imagine wrongfully claiming thousands of pounds in taxpayers' money, then having the balls to say that the exposure was the morally questionable thing that happened here. In light of this news, Nadine said that she would no longer claim expenses. This would put her in a strong position to campaign for the abolishment of the expense programme. That was until 2016 when she began to claim £1,820 in rent per month between August and November. Now this isn't against parliamentary regulation, it's just a dick move. Although, to be fair, she was only making around £200,000 a year between her MP's salary, her books, and being on a speakers panel. The hypocrisy of thinking you should be entitled to claim these benefits while telling us that she loathes that system and will not be party to it, while also condemning those struggling to tax increases and benefit freezes, is so fucking Tory, it's unbelievable. Pause. During her time as a Secretary of State, she tweeted that LBC presenter James O'Brien was a public school posh boy fuckwit. Leaving aside the fact that he went to the same school as her two daughters, she was actually pushing for legislation that would make it illegal to abuse others online at the same time. She also contacted his employers a number of times, accusing him of being mentally ill and trying to get him fired. It's honestly impossible to underestimate this woman. Nadine also did a brief stint on I'm a Celebrity before it was cool for morally ambivalent MPs to do it. She had the Conservative whip suspended from her because she didn't actually tell the Chief Whip that she was going on the show. So, just to be clear, she broke the MP's code of conduct so she could get paid to be surrounded by cockroaches and maggots. Oh, wait, sorry, wrong image, silly me, what am I like? Still, let's forge forward. 2013. Nadine was one of 155 MPs that employed their family members. She increased the salary of her 28-year-old daughter by approximately £10,000 to the £40,000 to £45,000 bracket while she worked as a constituency caseworker. Despite railing against nepotism within the BBC, in November 2022 she still employed her daughter at a salary of £50,000 a year as a senior parliamentary assistant. Not only is this actual nepotism at its most obvious, but MPs can also claim staffing expenses. So not only are they arguably more culpable for taking our jobs than the immigrants they hate so much, but they are claiming the money to pay them from taxpayer funds. The good news is that if you were elected after 2017, you can no longer hire family members. Now I assume this is because IPSA investigated and found that nothing sketchy at all was happening, and that it totally wasn't being abused by corrupt, self-serving arseholes on both sides of the political spectrum. In 2020, she was appointed as Secretary of State for Patient Safety, Suicide Prevention and Mental Health, which I can't help but feel is a bit like appointing a bird-eating tarantula as the Secretary of State for not having nightmares. This is where the Boris Johnson arc began, and she became the Glenn Close to his Michael Douglas. I just aged myself. Pause. No context on this one, just watch this.
This is how we're improving online safety. The UK is passing some new legislation to make the internet safer for the younger generation. It's effectively a framework to protect internet users from scams, illegal content and anonymous abusers. It will force big tech to stop their terms being breached and puts in measures to defend free speech. But is it true it will impact freedom of expression? No, we put in legal protections in the 19th section. Another thing we're doing to the laws we're passing is tackling online crime and cyber flashing. If companies fail to comply with the law, fail to protect the users that they're responsible for, the regulator Ofcom will have the power to fine, so platforms must keep people safe online.
That's it. Carry on. Nadine is now widely recognised as being Boris Johnson's biggest fan. Not just because of his boyish good looks or his way with kids, but also because he's a rich, corrupt old arsehole with somehow the second most ridiculous head of hair in politics. Now, if that doesn't make you love him, he's also deeply racist. Now, she's caught some flack in the news for staring longingly into his big soulless eyes and defending him against the outrage mob just because he had a few parties or whatever. No big deal. Boris got rather upset and flustered at the idea of being held to account by those he deems lesser than him, which is everybody, obviously. He struggled to defend himself against the tirade of logic and reason being volleyed at him from his fellow MPs, employing the interesting tactic of using Rishi Sunak as a gorgeous and handsome human shield. But fear not, because Nadine fucking Dorries is here to stand up for truth and honour. Now let's see what she has to say about it.
The word Partygate is just, it's a misnomer. Number 10 is an office building with an iconic front door. And it was a workplace. Parties, as far as I'm concerned, take place socially. This was people in their own workplace.
Well, if that doesn't sway you, I don't know what will. But look, I'm sure she knows something that we don't. I'm sure she wouldn't just say something outrageously incorrect and embarrass herself into speechlessness. No, that would be like thinking that Channel 4 is a publicly funded company, which it obviously definitely is not.
So I would argue that to say that just because Channel 4 has been established as a public service broadcaster and just because it's in receipt of public money, we should never kind of audit the future of Channel 4 and we should never evaluate how Channel 4 looks in the future and whether or not it's a sustainable and viable model. It's quite right that the government should do that.
But Channel 4 is not like the BBC. It's not in receipt of licence fee money. It makes its money from commercial operations.
And so, although it's, and...
Oh, wow. Well, still, at least she wasn't the Secretary of State for Media at the time or anything. Oh, fuck. In a poetic twist of fate, Gonads resigned as Secretary of State on Guy Fawkes Day 2022. This was in anticipation of Liz Porkmarket's Truss becoming Prime Minister. She was probably quoted as saying that she hates to see Boris leave but loves to see him walking away. I'm just kidding. I assure you, she has never claimed to want Boris's Johnson. Not publicly, anyway. So she returned to the backbenches, and now spends her time quietly focusing on making her constituency as prosperous and happy as possible. Or she's cashing in on writing books and presenting her own show on GB News.
Coming up on tonight's programme, for a change, a man who is going to clear up a woman's mess. That's Rishi's vow as he enters number 10. As you were, Sunak's stability extends to the cabinet with the big beefsteak and all cages but Braverman back at home in the Home Office. Sorry, I've just completely messed up. They're in our studio and we've frisked them for a clue. Stick around for Just Stop Oil live.
Wow. Just wow. Thank you for watching. Before I sign off, I just want to let you guys know that I've decided to open a Patreon account. The link is in the description. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so there, but please, if you have any doubt at all about sparing the expense, I don't want you to subscribe to it. It's not a problem, times are tough, and my content will always remain free to watch. If you would like to show support for your channel in any other way, just press the like button or subscribe or share the video with a friend or just hug your pets and smush their little faces. Love you. Bye bye.